Okay, welcome to the week 4 go-to session. This is the final go-to session we're holding this month. This session is going to be pretty short. I'm going to try to keep it to half an hour or so because I really only have some final reminders to go over, which is why I've titled this final session Peer Review and Final Reminders, okay? Because that's really what we're working on this week. Um, you're all involved in peer review right now, and really the only other thing to work on as far as I can remember, FSO is down right now for maintenance. But yeah, there's nothing else except for an optional discussion which isn't graded. There's really only peer review and then to continue working on your presentations. You submitted your rough drafts on Sunday night. You should have posted it to the peer review board already. So if you haven't, please get that done as soon as possible because that's kind of the main activity for the first part of this week, right? That you're posting your presentation drafts on the board, and you're going to give each other thoughtful feedback. One thing I should mention, it was sent out as an announcement. It was also included in the activity instructions, at least the instructions that you read right there on FSO, not the actual PDF file. I was supposed to put you in groups, like I was supposed to assign you 3 people whose work you were supposed to look at and respond. I've decided just to show a little bit of trust and ask everybody to respond to 3 people on their own, always giving attention to those who have not received feedback. Excuse me. So I don't want to see like one person at the top of the page getting 10 responses, but then someone further down who has received 0. So as long as you're spreading the wealth and giving each other solid feedback, you should be fine. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to say about that? No, not really. I basically kind of deviated from what's on the actual PDF instruction sheet just because when I do assign people to groups, something always happens. There's a member of the group who hasn't turned in their draft, or they've posted something to the board, but there's a problem with it. And even though classmates try to alert the person to the fact that there's a problem, maybe the person never checks back. So I don't know. This way, you can ensure that you respond to 3 people's work and fulfill the requirements. Um, let's see. I think someone typed something in the chat. Brandon says, "Can we post an update draft instead of the one we submitted last week?" Yes, absolutely. You have an edit function on the discussion board. Okay, so near the bottom of your post, you should see an edit function. That should allow you to go in and make changes if you need to. If it doesn't, let me know, but I'm pretty sure you can do that. I mean, I go in and edit my posts because sometimes I find that even though I'm the instructor, I'm not error free. Sometimes I see that there's a proofreading error, or sometimes I realize that maybe I didn't word something correctly. So you should be able to go in and update things, even like getting rid of your link to your presentation and replacing it with another. Some real quick words about peer review. Real quickly, just I have like 3 feedback tips to keep in mind. This stuff should be sort of common sense. Perhaps you've done peer review in the past, right? Lots of times this happens in English classes. It doesn't have to be English though. Um, right? Usually it can feel like busy work. At least that's been my experience because the teacher puts you into groups, you exchange papers. You don't really want to sit there and read the paper. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Some people take it seriously and find it valuable. But one of the things I really love about online classes is that you get to design your own schedule. So if you look at someone's presentation and need to think about it, you can walk away, go for a walk, wash the dishes, go out and get a burrito. You can do that, right? You can't do that when you're there in the classroom live. So that's one of the things I like about the online structure. Or if you're just not in the mood, right? You don't want to respond. Take the evening off. Okay, I think according to the instructions, you're supposed to have your draft posted by Monday evening, and then you have until Thursday to respond to at least 3 of your classmates. So well, it's already Tuesday, but if last night wasn't a good night for you, take it off. If tonight isn't a good night, I mean, I'd prefer that not everybody wait until Thursday at 11 p.m. To submit feedback to one another. But you have that time and space to sort of walk away, think things through, or I don't know, just get whatever in your life needs to be gotten in order before you return to the board. So I like that. That's called asynchronous, right? There's synchronous learning, meaning learning that occurs in real time, like a traditional classroom. And there's asynchronous learning, which is what we do online. Um, and even though I do hear from a lot of people who are frustrated because they'd prefer to have, traditional classes, at least the campus students. I do think there's lots of benefits to asynchronous learning. So real quickly, some quick feedback tips that you should be able to practice, because again, you have all the time and space to do things well. Number one is to be positive. Okay. I know it's a challenge sometimes. It can be a challenge for me too, because my style is to be sort of straightforward, frank, direct, not rude, but I don't mince words, though I try to put in what's working well, and I try to be the most generous grader that I can. Basically, I look at any project, whether it's when I'm teaching creative presentation or when I'm teaching English. I've mentioned several times I also teach in the English department. I always sit down excited. Like, I want to read your draft. I want to read your discussion posts. I want to see your efforts. And I never go into it thinking, oh, let's look for problems, or, oh, gosh, I'm sure this is going to be flawed. No, no, no. I think the opposite, which is good, because I'd say I'm one of the more generous graders. Like, I'm always giving people points, even if they don't do things quite exactly right, because um, it's your first class. It's your first introduction to Full Sail. It's not my goal to fail anybody. That said, I'm not trying to just push people through. There is work to be done. But I try to use this first course at Full Sail as a learning opportunity. So yeah, be positive. Okay, let's all try to stay positive. Let's try to give each other useful feedback and be as helpful as possible. Feedback tip number two: be specific. Okay, we're at that stage in the course now where, if you've been attending the go-to sessions or you've been watching them after they've been posted, you've heard me repeat the same things over and over again, right? How many times have I repeated what we're working on all month? A 3 to 5 minute presentation aimed at employers. How many times have I said that we're trying to break bad habits, like just opening blank slides and throwing words and bulleted lists on them, right? That we're doing something that's quite a bit different. Though I think more fun. I think it's just more interesting to, for example, even the slide we're looking at now, right? I went out and found an image that I think captures this idea of be specific. Um, a dart being aimed at the center of a dartboard. Again, to me, that's more interesting and more effective, because that way there's a visual anchor, something to keep you somewhat entertained or amused. But the real focus here is what I'm saying. And if you look at really skilled presenters, that's pretty much the technique that they use. Um, Dull presenters just throw words on a slide, um, so that they either function like words that you could have just handed out. There's no reason for the presentation, or that they're acting like cue cards, right? They're just visual cues for you to remember what you say, what to say, but it's not terribly interesting for your audience. But yeah, back to being specific. We're at that stage where you've hopefully kept up with the textbook chapters. Hopefully you've been attending or watching the go-to sessions, so you kind of know what these presentations should be doing, visually, in terms of message, in terms of different techniques one can use to make the material more interesting. So draw upon that knowledge and be specific. If you see visuals that aren't very effective, you can point that out. If someone seems to be just turning in an old school style PowerPoint presentation filled with text and bulleted lists, I mean, feel free to point that out, okay? But yeah, be specific, because there's nothing worse than just being completely general and saying, oh, looks good to me, or, oh, visuals could be improved a little bit. Okay, how? Where are the visuals not working? Or where in the the scripted delivery could things be added or removed? So draw upon everything that you sort of learned this month when you're giving feedback. And finally, feedback tip number three is, when you do offer critiques or suggestions, use softeners or qualifiers. That's why I have this picture here of the throw pillows that spell out the word love. It's difficult because when you're not face to face, you don't have those typical, what are called non-verbal cues that can indicate to someone that your words are actually not as rough as they sound, right? So things like a smile, tone of voice, laughter, um, just general facial expressions overall. None of that is available when you're communicating. And you all know this. You've seen plenty of discussions that occur online where people get into heated arguments or start flaming one another, or seem like they want to be at each other's throats. And maybe part of that's just the nature of online conversations, but probably some of it's due to the fact too that the two people aren't speaking face to face. Because we know that, what I mean by using softeners and qualifiers is that we tend to soften our language. You may not notice it, but I do it all the time. I'll say things like, "Oh, I was a bit confused here," or "This seemed a little bit blah, blah, blah. Right? I'm not saying things with 100% directness. I'm sort of cushioning what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to sugarcoat things. It doesn't mean that I'm avoiding giving specific constructive feedback, but I am aware that I have to kind of soften things a little bit. Um, Even when I'm being incredibly direct, I'll often use a kind of joking tone. I'm a little bit concerned that it doesn't sometimes come across, but I'll say things like, "Oh, okay, I get it. Uh, you clearly didn't have time to time to work on this. I get it. You have a busy life, but more effort could have gone into this aspect." Um, so I sometimes will use a direct kind of conversational style, and the conversational style is my attempt to sort of use softeners or qualifiers. So use whatever method works for you, but be aware that being incredibly direct and frank can sometimes turn a person off. Other than that, my main advice for peer review is just to sort of, I mean, you have these RISE feedback models, right? I don't know if you've ever taken a look at them, but for any discussion, there's a PDF file which shows the RISE model. And I've said all month, use the RISE model. It's great. But if you can create quality specific in-depth feedback on your own, just intuitively, that's fine too. So your task really here is to look at least three people's presentation drafts and give decent, specific, in-depth feedback, right? About what's working well and what could be improved. If you're doing that, you should be just fine for the peer review activity. And if you have any questions, we'll have a few moments toward the end of the session where you can ask questions, or you can use the chat, even though the chat isn't working. But I can read your comments, okay? I see them. Nobody else does. But if you do ask something, I'll just read it out loud. Okay, reminders, right? Basically, in addition to peer review, the big thing to work on is just finishing off your actual presentation because it's due Sunday at midnight. So here's a list of reminders. This, in some ways, is sort of a recap of the main things we've been learning all month. It doesn't mean that you should just skip the textbook chapters if you haven't, or not go back and watch individual go-to sessions if you need to. But this is a sort of list of maybe the main points we've covered all month. First of all, remember the basics, right? We're working on a 3 to 5 minute presentation. You are a recent full sales graduate, so we're imagining ourselves probably for you guys 2 years in the future. Okay, and you are presenting yourself to a prospective employer. If you want to imagine a very specific employer, that's great. Okay, if you just want to think about employers in general, that's fine. Some of you might be in industries where you might not literally work for a company, but a client would hire you. That's cool too. Okay, but I did see some issues with the planning activity where people were sort of creating almost like crowdsourcing documents. You all know what crowdsourcing is, right? Things like Kickstarter, where people were pitching ideas and trying to sell them. And I, and I just say, no, 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 that's not what we're working on. I mean, that could be a really cool project too. Maybe Creative Presentation could come up with a sort of a crowdfunding or crowdsourcing activity designed with the presentation, but that's not what we're working on. Okay, we're working on a 3 to 5 minute presentation aimed at prospective employers. Choose a presentation tool that you're familiar with. PowerPoint is at the top for good reason. Lots of students choose it. I have no problem with PowerPoint. Some people mistake that, oh, David keeps going off on PowerPoint and all those bad PowerPoint presentations. No, PowerPoint is fine. I love PowerPoint. It's probably my preferred tool. Uh, my problem is with the way that people use PowerPoint sort of ineffectively. And because it's this powerhouse product, right? This powerhouse software product, everybody knows how to use it, but it seems like most people use it badly. Other tools you can use, Keynote, okay, which is the basically the Mac version of PowerPoint. Prezi, that's an online tool. Okay, it's a presentation tool. I've mentioned it before. It mimics 3D type effects. It's really what's called like 2.5D, right? It's 2D, but it sort of makes it look 3D-ish. Prezi is a really cool tool. If you're not familiar with it, though, a Prezi presentation can look really bad if you're not really very familiar with those tools. Screen recording software, film editing software. Okay, there are screen recording tools you can use. For example, if you just Google search for screen recording, you'll come up with the results like Screencast-O-Matic. They're really simple tools where with the click of a mouse or a click of your touchpad, you can start recording whatever's on your screen. But because other tools have similar functions, I don't think the screen recording software will be perhaps your first choice. But film editing software is a terrific choice, and it's one that not a lot of people think of. So I'm going to switch real quickly to iMovie. iMovie is a really, really easy, friendly video editing tool that comes with Mac. I know, right? Unless you're a campus student, you don't have your MacBook yet. If you're an online student, do we have any campus students here, by the way? Um, if you're an online student, you won't get your MacBook until month 4. But there are other programs that are pretty similar to iMovie, right? It's been, gosh, it's been so long since I've used a PC or Windows Movie Maker, but they'll have almost the exact same functions. I think iMovie is a little bit more user friendly. I think iMovie, like a lot of Mac products, is kind of designed for ease of use. So you've probably heard of iMovie or GarageBand, tools like that. But yeah, if you use a PC tool, they'll have similar functions. Okay, Darby says she's a campus student. Okay, good. So you have your Mac, right? So you don't have to use your iMovie thing, but realize that it's a tool. And what I have here is a presentation that I made actually for another class, for my English class. And sadly, GoTo doesn't allow you to hear sound. So I'm just going to run a little bit of it and point some things out. Let's see if I can blow this up. Okay. So there's me. Super attractive me. Okay, yeah. I need more hair. I could lose 10 pounds. Let me pause it for a second. As you can see, it allows me to use simple tools. Like here I am just using the laptop camera to film myself. And yeah, it's a little bit awkward. I actually picked out a location in my home, got dressed up, sat in front of the bookshelf. I was trying to pick a pretty neutral background. You don't have to appear on camera. Okay, I do, just because I thought it lended a little bit of credibility to it. But you can see with iMovie, I get to do nice little things like add this little strip in here that says who I am, right? Because if I just appear on camera, who cares? But maybe if you see my name and my title, I'm an educator, you'll listen to what I have to say. Um, so it begins with a short little intro from me. And then you can use iMovie's tools to create things like this, little in between bits. And I don't know if you can hear, but there's some piano music playing in the background. That just comes from iMovie's library of sounds. So it has lots of music files. It has sound effects like crickets chirping or people applauding. But you can create these really cool intertitles. So I picked this design, this sort of black matte design with a really simple and elegant font. Okay. And then there's my presentation. This presentation is relying pretty heavily on images that I found. I created things like this real quick. Remember, text on a slide isn't always bad. Here, I'm not literally reading these things out loud because that would be boring, but it's a visual thing that my audience can look at while I'm still speaking over this. Okay, so that I created on my own. I'm just gonna let's run a few seconds longer. I know this isn't very interesting to everybody. Okay, so there's another image. But again, the images are acting as visual anchors, right? What's important is what I'm saying over these images. Okay, we'll stop it there. I'm not going to show the whole 3-minute presentation. But yeah, I created that map. Right, actually, the map I found, it was a free to use, meaning shareable map, and I ended up coloring it in and shading it in and stuff. Okay, but here's my point I want to make is that film editing software can be really useful because what happened to my control panel? Where's my presentation? There we go. Film editing software can be really useful because you can sort of create a presentation and use these film-like tools. Like iMovie is great because you can record right there and then in the program, right? You have this little microphone tool. So once you have your piece, right? So here's one section, here's another section, here's another section. For this section, for example, I can just click record and record what I want to accompany this image or this text up here or this map, right? And then if what I've recorded doesn't match in length what's here, I can just go into it, right? There's a way you can kind of, I forget which tool it is, but you can double click on whatever section you're working on and just set it for how many ever seconds you want, right? So it matches your scripted material that you're speaking. And like I said, it has a bank of music files and sound effects that are already built in. So it's kind of like this all-in-one program. And some of these things, like this map or this little factoid slide that I created, I did in PowerPoint. Okay, I just created in PowerPoint. I save that individual slide as I think a JPEG, and then you just drag the image into the program. It's really that simple. And then, yeah, you can add things like, well, here, let me click on this. It's, I don't know why. There we go. Right, so you can create these little inter things, and you can do cool effects. I don't know if you noticed there, but the text is actually moving slightly. So yeah, it's a really powerful program that gives you tools that either aren't available in traditional software, presentation software, or maybe they're so buried that you're not sure how to use it. So don't be afraid of like film editing software. You can use it much in the same way that you would use presentation software and have kind of slicker and fancier results. Okay, reminder number three: keep key concepts in mind. Okay, the things we've been talking about all month. That it's useful to think of your presentation in terms of a journey, right, with a beginning, middle, and end. So, what will your opening move be? Um, okay, the middle will probably contain the bulk of your material, but how will you end things? Right? What will your ending move be? We talked about a star moment, that hopefully there's one part in your presentation that you're really proud of because you think your slide looks awesome, or you think that what you're delivering in your spoken piece is tremendous, or maybe you've come up with a unique way to phrase things, or something that's just going to stick in people's mind, right? That will be your star moment, which stands for something they'll always remember. Effective visuals, okay? Again, I've been repeating all month that we use simple and effective visuals as the sort of not a generic placeholder. It should be something you've put effort into. You shouldn't just be grabbing any image and throwing it on the slide, but finding the right image that sort of connects with what you are saying over that image. This idea of repeatable sound bites, okay? Coming up with unique ways of saying things. Or if there's a point that you really want to echo and hammer home, you might repeat that idea throughout, giving the presentation a sense of continuity. I gave the example last week of Steve Jobs, who kept using a variation on the phrase "reinvent the phone." Right, so he kept talking about reinvent the phone, a reinvention of the phone, and he did it like 5 or 6 times in his speech. That was on purpose. Finally, design principles. Chapter 6 in Slideology has a lot of useful information on design if you're not very comfortable with that aspect. Um, but yeah, I think I said this, I don't remember, week 2 or week 3, but yeah, I'm not really grading that heavily on graphic design, but I want to see some attention paid to that. We're not just throwing images anywhere on the slide, um, that we're actually paying some attention to things like alignment, right? Making things not look chaotic. And if you're confused about that, chapter 6 in Slideology covers a lot of that. Remember too, like, whatever presentation tool you're using, especially PowerPoint or Keynote, they do have automatic grid lines that appear. So sometimes if you're just haphazardly throwing things around, and you're not sure why these lines are sometimes appearing across the entire slide, it's because the program is trying to guide you, okay, where to put that image so that it lines up with other elements. So take advantage of those tools. Reminder 4, and this is probably the biggest one I need to remind you of. Yeah, you should be creating a script. Okay. Um, every month I see probably a handful of students, sometimes more, sometimes a few less. It's getting a little bit better because I keep repeating this really, really strongly. But they're winging it, right? They put together some slides, and then when it's time to record things, they sort of wing it. They might have notes. I'm sure they're not sitting down with absolutely nothing, but they don't have a plan. Maybe they thought their notes were good enough on their own and they could just speak extemporaneously. Okay, but that never works. Even right now, as I'm speaking to you, how many times have I stumbled? How many times have I said, How many times have I had to search for the right word because it wasn't coming? Probably more times than I would like. I would never do that in a professional presentation. Okay. I mean, sometimes when you speak live, you can't avoid it entirely. But this is a much different kind of speech giving exercise, right? You're not delivering this live. You're not doing this in front of a real audience. You have all the time in the world. Well, not all the time in the world. You have 7 days from now, or actually fewer, right? It's Tuesday. You have 5 or 6 days to get this done. But still, you have a lot of time and space to make sure that things are just perfect. So, yes, I recommend creating a script, okay? And, and then using that script, perfecting it, and then using that as your actual recorded voiceover, okay? Record your script in chunks. If I go back real quickly to iMovie, for a lot of these segments, like this opening segment where I'm on camera, which runs, I forget how long, I don't know. It probably only runs about 20 seconds. This was actually more challenging because I had to memorize that and then do it in front of the camera. But for all the other stuff, like when there's an image on the screen or when there's this a data sheet, more images, right? The maps. I was just reading, like I had it open on I can't remember. Did I print it out or did I have it somewhere else? But anyway, I had it in front of me. So when I clicked the microphone, I just read my script and then I could listen back to it. Was I speaking too fast? Was I speaking too slow? Was my tone appropriate? Did I sound dead and half asleep, or did I sound alive and motivated? Okay. And if you're having a script, you don't have to worry so much. You probably won't have as many screw ups. You probably won't have to re-record as often because you already have your words down on the page. Okay. So yeah, if you can record your script in chunks, that's useful. Even in PowerPoint, I'm sorry for opening and closing things, but even in PowerPoint, if you go to, I don't remember where it is. Oh, slideshow. Okay. This is where you have these tools like record. Okay. So you can record whatever you want um, to accompany a given slide. Okay. So even PowerPoint gives you these basic tools. So yeah, there's no reason not to have a prepared script so that you can be sure that your voiceover is polished and professional. If possible, use a headset or mic. Okay, not everybody has that. I'm using a headset right now, but it's a really simple headset. It's like a Logitech cheap headset. It's not one of those it's not one of those fancy like snowball mics that cost $80 or $100. I'm not using professional audio equipment, but if you use a headset and a mic, it can clear up some of the kind of fuzziness or the echoiness that can occur if you don't. If you don't have a headset and mic, that's fine as too. Just make sure that you're recording in a place that's pretty quiet. Okay, a place that works pretty well for recording. Try out a few dry runs in terms of maybe recording a chunk and then listening back to it through headphones, ideally, to see how your voice sounds. The mic in your computer, and all of you. Occasionally, there are students who I think are doing work on a tablet or smartphone, but you should be doing work on like some sort of laptop or desktop computer, ideally. If you have one, your computer is going to have a built-in mic, especially on laptops. That's pretty common nowadays. So my MacBook, I mean, I don't see the mic. I don't know where it is, but it picks up whatever I say out loud if I'm recording something. But if you're not using a mic, yeah, just listen to what you record to make sure that it sounds okay, that you're not being drowned out by ambient noise, that it doesn't sound like you're 10 million miles away, and it should be fine. And lastly, at least I think this is the last one, proofread your work. Okay, make sure that it's free of errors, especially for text on the page. Again, it's not that you can never have words on a slide. It's just that shouldn't be the bulk of what you do. But you certainly don't want misspellings or other silly errors to appear, because how professional would that look, right? Would you send out a resume or cover letter filled with proofreading errors? No, of course not. And then again, yeah, view or listen to your presentation from the perspective of someone who is not you. I've been saying that all month as well. And I've already responded to, I think, maybe a handful of people's presentation drafts already. And already for a couple of them, I had to kind of repeat this advice. I mean, really put yourself in the shoes of, like, you're in charge of hiring for such and such company. Okay. And this afternoon, you have to sit through a dozen or more 5-minute presentations from prospective employees. Like, what would you want to hear if you had to hire the next person who's going to work for you? What would you want to hear? Create that presentation. Okay, create that presentation. Um, and already I'm seeing I'm actually seeing pretty decent work so far on the discussion board, but I am seeing already cases where I don't know, some of the information doesn't feel like it would be what an employer would want to hear. People's life stories, or why they chose Full Sail, or things like that. So you can spot a lot of these things if you just sort of step outside of yourself and look at things through your audience's point of view. Question time. And wow, am I awesome. That was exactly 30 minutes. Um, you can ask questions other ways, right? You can always send me a message through the FSO platform. But if you want to ask something live, this is your last chance to do it. Brandon says, I've read resumes and some cover letters are just, I moved to Florida. Well, you misspelled moved. I don't know if that was your point, that you see proofreading here, or if you're saying that the cover letters don't say anything beyond I moved to Florida. We don't have enough time, but I've taught resume and cover letter writing, uh, so I know quite a bit about that. So yeah, I've seen lots of bad cover letters. Other questions, comments about the presentation, about peer review, about what you need to do this week. If you are comfortable with what's gone over in this reminder session, you are allowed to go enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay. And if you do have any questions, just let me know. I'm going to hang out for a few minutes to answer questions that people may have. So thank you very much. Darby asks, is it all right to add background music not made by yourself? Awesome question. I can't believe I didn't cover that. The good news is I'm still recording, so hopefully other people hear this. How should I split this? No. I mean, it should either be created by yourself, or if you can use what are called Creative Commons sources. So, for example, if I go to the Full Sail Connect area, and I'm going to send an announcement about this too, because this is super important. Because yeah, this is a problem that I see. Okay, so you know all about Full Sail Connect, right? So I'm just going to click my way in. Um, if you go to the library, you can browse organizations, but it's probably faster just to grab the link down here. And then once you get to the library, if you click on Research Databases, okay, so right here. And if you scroll all the way down, there's this thing called Westar Music Database. Okay, and it gives you your email, your login and password. Okay, I think my stuff is remembered, so I'm going to log in real quickly. Okay, with my Full Sail generic password and login, which will be the same for you. And then what you get are all these. It's kind of corny because it's sort of like elevator music, right? So you get things like rock, pride of place, rock on the easy side. But the good thing is this is all free to use, and normally it would cost you anywhere between like $15 and $60. But you can go right into any of these albums. And I mean, you shouldn't be just grabbing anything. You choose a music track that's appropriate. But when you find one, it's just a matter of completing the checkout process, which for you will be free, and then you have an MP3 file that you can drag into your presentation. But yeah, um, as much as I like Taylor Swift, I don't want to hear her music in your presentation. What was I listening to the other day? It was Courtney Barnett. I like her too. I don't want to hear her music in your presentation. So no copyrighted material should be appearing anywhere, and that goes for images as well. And in the final moments of the week 3 go-to session, and I'll say this in an announcement as well to remind people, I discussed where you should be finding images if you need to use images that you didn't create yourself or that you have on hand in your personal photo collection. Okay. So yeah, it's got to come from a source like Westar Music, or if you find something that seems to come from what's called a Creative Commons database, meaning images, media files that are free to use as long as you give credit, you should run it by me first. The final point I'll make, because you probably want to run out of here, is that if you use the right program, because you're a campus student, Darby, so if you want to take a chance on using something like film editing software, that comes with just a ton of sound files, and those you don't have to cite or worry about. That's just built into the program. Okay, so does that help? Does that make sense? Mohammed, you entered the room, which is awesome. It really is. I got bad news though. The session is already over. I'm just answering questions. Today was a light session because really I only had to go over final reminders. So it's only about 30 minutes long, so you can always just watch it after the fact and get caught up. Okay, any final questions, people? Okay, if there are not any final questions, you better type fast. Because the sooner I can get this up and start processing it, the sooner I can send it out to everybody as an announcement so everybody can enjoy the final session. Okay, so thanks to the people who showed up, though. Um, like I said, I promised a light session, and it was. So I'm going to go ahead and close things out, okay? So if you do have questions, okay, Carl finally asked. Is there any way to get extra credit? No, because extra credit's very weird. It's not that I'm against the idea of extra credit, but extra credit has to be made available to everyone or no one. So I can't really give individual people extra credit. So, but Carl, I think you were. I mean, well, I shouldn't. Well, hey, let me stop the recording.